and C with entertainer R. Kelly. He's still behind bars at this hour. Now, at a hearing in New York Thursday, a federal court judge denied the singer's bond request so he could prepare for his sex trafficking trial next month with his two new attorneys. Now, R. Kelly is accused of running an enterprise to recruit young women and girls for sex. The 54-year-old denied abusing anyone. Judge Ann Donnelly assured R. Kelly and his legal team that they could meet at the jail 7 days a week if they wanted in terms of preparing for that trial next month. This since R. Kelly's mandatory quarantine is now over following his transfer from a Chicago facility to New York. The judge also ruled the trial will start as planned on August 9th, but opening statements have now been pushed back about a week to August 18th. And instead of a right after a jury is picked. Now, R. Kelly apparently did not address the court at the hearing, except to exchange greetings with the judge. Now, here joining us to give us more insight is the man behind the case. Not R. Kelly, but his attorney, Michael Leonard. He's part of that hearing. And he joins us again. Thank you for joining us, sir. You're one of several attorneys representing R. Kelly, who's facing multiple charges in several states. Attorney Leonard, thank you again. So let's jump right in. Mr. Kelly, as we all know him as is R. Kelly, he was in court in New York federal courtroom Thursday, and we understand you joined by phone from Chicago. Why do you think, or better yet, why was R. Kelly's bond denied? And did Judge Ann Donnelly give a reason? If so, what was it?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. It was kind of a bond hearing that wasn't. It was sort of extraordinary from that standpoint. You know, traditionally in a federal court bond hearing, you spend your time arguing about why the person is not a flight risk and why they're not a danger to the community. This took on a different tenor because the reasons cited by counsel for the bond were issues that the judge was concerned about and really wanted to address with the counsel who filed the motion to make sure that he was really sort of serious about what he was saying. And, you know, she sort of started out by questioning him about whether he was really serious that he believed the MCC Chicago had been eavesdropping on his FaceTime meetings with counsel and his in-person meetings. And so because that's a real serious issue. If it were true, you know, you could get a case dismissed. And, you know, when that happens at any jail, anywhere, that's, you know, cause for alarm and cause for overturning, you know, hundreds of cases. So she was sort of taken aback by that allegation. And, you know, really the only response that the counsel had was that my other attorney, Ms. Blank-Becker, told me that she thought it was true. And really, obviously, the judge was not pleased because if it were true, it would be something that would lead to criminal charges and that sort of thing. And then the other issue...
Who would face criminal charges, Attorney Leonard, if it were true?
Oh, yeah. Well, if a jail or prison was tape recording meetings between attorneys and defendants or FaceTime meetings, they would be clearly federally prosecuted for doing that. So it's an extraordinary thing that really almost never happens. And if you want to make an allegation like that, you better make sure that it's true. And that's kind of what the judge was pointing out to the attorney.
Got it. Okay. We also know that the judge also kept that August 9th court date, which gives the new attorneys very little time, as we discussed yesterday. I think the word we were trying to pronounce was Herculean efforts to get up to speed. See, I came back strong today. I got it right.
You did. You did. Were you practicing?
We both practice, exactly.
Yeah.
So now they literally have to race to get up to speed, but they did push back opening statements. Does this help his new defense team prepare now? And will you be joining? We also know that you requested to be removed from the case, you and attorney Steve Greenberg.
Well, we won't be joining, but keep in mind, up until a couple weeks ago, you know, you keep characterizing them as a new defense team, but Mr. Farinella, Ms. Blank-Becker, they've been involved for more than a year, maybe a year and a half. So they were participants in all the FaceTime calls 3 times a week with Mr. Kelly, and they had the opportunity, if they wanted to go meet with him in person in Chicago. So they're really not new to the case at all. They've been with the case, you know, since really almost its inception. The only new person is the trial lawyer that the 2 remaining lawyers brought in a trial lawyer because, as we've talked about, they just don't have federal criminal trial experience at all. So they brought in Mr. Kanek to essentially try the case. So we won't be joining that team. And, you know, I think Next week, when the judge finishes what we talked about a couple times, this Curcio hearing, then she will allow our motion to withdraw. But as we talked about previously, it's a procedural step. She can't let us out until she vets with Mr. Kelly in court to his face whatever conflicts might exist with Ms. Blank-Becker, and also give his court-appointed counsel from New York the chance to meet with Mr. Kelly in person and explain those potential conflicts to him, which I understand that meeting is taking place today.
Now, you mentioned if a jail, was recording. Let me start over. Mr. Kelly assumed, or he felt, that someone was listening to his conversations. Now with the judge saying that they can essentially meet every single day, do you think that will happen? And does that still run the risk of him not feeling comfortable being open and honest, and better yet, transparent with his legal team while still meeting in jail?
Well, just keep in mind, it wasn't Mr. Kelly that thought his meetings or calls were being recorded. I mean, I was on dozens of those calls, right? And I also met with him in person. I had no belief ever that they were being recorded. Okay, what happened was an investigator from suburban New York went to the jail. He had never been to the MCC Chicago in his whole life, and that was in like May, right? And he saw there was like kind of a box on the wall in the attorney meeting room, which in days of yesteryear, they used that to have cameras so that, you know, people could appear in court by video, and they don't use that anymore. There's no cameras in those boxes, right? But the investigator, who was unfamiliar with the facility, assumed that, oh, wow, you know, maybe they have the capacity to tape us, which they don't, and they would never do, because it would be incredibly stupid. It would be the quickest means to get a case dismissed in federal court that you can possibly imagine, and all the guards at the jail would get federally prosecuted. So there's no concern that he was being taped in Chicago, and obviously all four of the attorneys were involved in all those FaceTime calls. There was no taping going on, and it wasn't really Mr. Kelly that brought the concern forward. It was that investigator who was just unfamiliar with the workings of Chicago MCC. Likewise, now Mr. Kelly is in the MCC in New York, in Brooklyn. There's no possibility that they're going to try to tape his meetings with the lawyers. That will never happen. And again, if it did, the attorneys will probably welcome it because they get the case dismissed immediately. So there's no concern there. And the good thing is Mr. Kanak, the new trial lawyer, will have the chance, if he wants, to meet with R. Kelly, you know, every day of the week, including Saturday or Sunday, 8 hours a day. But, you know, realistically, of course, he's not going to spend all his time doing that. When you're preparing for trial, you're going to be keenly focused on, you know, developing your cross-examinations and getting ready for trial in that respect. But it is good that the judge is entering an order requiring that facility in Brooklyn to give them essentially unfettered access to Mr. Kelly. But remember, the other two attorneys have had that kind of access for a year, but it's important for Mr. Kanak, who's really going to try the case, to have that access to get the relationship with Robert Kelly going, to understand Robert's insight into all these witnesses who are going to testify against him. So it's extremely important that Mr. Kanak have that time with R. Kelly, and it'll be quite useful.
Attorney Leonard, yes or no? We know you're going to be removed from this case, but he has other cases as well. Will you be representing him in those cases?
That's something we're still talking about. So we don't have a decision on that. We're taking that under advisement, and we're not worried about that right now. The biggest thing for Robert is this case in New York, which is a winnable case. It's based upon a strange legal theory that doesn't fit R. Kelly's band, which is called the RICO statute. So this should be the focus, this case, winning this case, and not worrying about anything else.
Got it. Attorney Leonard, thank you for joining us on BNC. We appreciate your insight.